Hello everyone and welcome to The No Show. I'll be your host Nathan Orenstein and today I'm going to be reviewing Send Help. Send Help is written by Damian, Shannon, and Mark Swift, directed by Sam Raimi, and stars Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien. Corporate strategist Linda and CEO Bradley are the only two survivors of a plane crash that maroons them on a remote island. The power dynamic from their office lives flips with Bradley's badly injured leg and Linda's survival skills, and the two must survive together or against one another as the two hate each other and constantly struggle to maintain the upper hand. Send Help is a return to form for Sam Raimi that I wasn't sure we were ever going to get, to be honest. If you didn't know, he's the director behind the iconic original Evil Dead trilogy, and more recently, the equally iconic Spider-Man trilogy of the 2000s. More recently, though, he's kind of found himself in Disney jail, directing the bizarre Oz the Great and Powerful film, and most recently, the mediocre Doctor Strange sequel. And while this is his best film since the 2000s, it also marks a return to the over-the-top, goofy, violent thriller beginnings that put him on the map back in the 80s. Send Help sets things up quickly and effectively for what's ultimately a pretty simple story. Linda, played by Rachel McAdams, is a loyal and talented strategist at her company who is pretty frumpy and socially awkward. Bradley, played by Dylan O'Brien, is the new CEO who recently got the job when his father passed away. He is, for lack of a better word, an asshole, and he promotes his frat brother / golf buddy up to vice president, a position that Linda had been promised by Bradley's father. Right from the start, these two are at odds, with Bradley clearly holding power over Linda as her boss. But of course, when their plane goes down and survivor enthusiast Linda takes control, everything gets flipped on its head. While Send Help isn't really doing anything particularly new or interesting with this story and setup, it's Raimi's direction that makes this such an entertaining watch. For one, he gets two completely unhinged performances out of Rachel McAdams and Dylan O'Brien. I would describe their characters as exaggerated caricatures of people you would encounter in a real-life corporate setting, but the performances definitely emphasize that exaggeration. I'm not sure I've ever seen McAdams in a role like this, at first portraying Linda as this brutally awkward person, but then as this strong survivor woman who revels in her newfound power. O'Brien, on the other hand, is incredibly grating as this asshole boss, in a funny way, I should clarify, but once he's on the island and relying on Linda, it puts him in this weak, vulnerable position that I think O'Brien plays equally well. And some of his facial expressions throughout this movie lead to some of the funniest moments I've seen in a theater in quite some time. That's the other thing about this movie. It's hilarious, but it doesn't feel like it was written explicitly to be so funny. What I mean by that is I think it's Raimi pulling the strings of his actors and just the way everything's filmed and the exaggerated nature of everything he captures that makes this so funny and entertaining from start to finish. But this thing also gets pretty graphic with its violence too. The movie seems to be being marketed as a horror movie, and I don't really agree with that, but it is a thriller with some horror tendencies for sure. Sometimes you gotta brutally kill a boar to survive on an island, and sometimes you gotta threaten your coworker in graphic ways to prove a point. I saw this in a packed house, and there were multiple moments where myself and the rest of the audience audibly winced at what was happening on screen. It was awesome. There's also just some great blood and gore practical effects all over this thing, which I of course wouldn't expect any less from Sam Raimi. The movie is at its best in the moments where it's hitting its absolute over-the-top peak, in the unhinged performances, the funniness, and the graphic violence. There are parts of this film that are truly some of the most fun scenes I've had in a theater in the past few years. I will say there are also moments here when things start to drag, though, which isn't entirely surprising considering it is just two people stuck on an island for nearly 2 hours. I also found most of this to be largely predictable. I don't think that's a crazy thing to say. If you saw Triangle of Sadness a few years ago specifically, this is going to feel very familiar, but ratchet up the antics and the violence thanks to Sam Raimi. But this also isn't the kind of film trying to be anything more than it is, which weirdly enough makes it feel almost like a relic of a bygone era. It's refreshing, even if it's not the best thing in the world. But not everything has to be, you know? Send Help is the kind of movie you go to the movies for. It's a total popcorn flick, and it had me laughing and grimacing pretty much from start to finish. Sure, it's not the most original or inherently exciting concept, and it does drag its feet in the sand at times, but overall, I found this to be incredibly entertaining. Shout out to Sam Raimi for getting to make the movie he clearly loves to make again, and big props to McAdams and O'Brien for going fully balls to the wall with their performances here. I'd recommend this to pretty much any fan of thrillers, and especially to any fans of Sam Raimi. I'm going to be giving it a 7 out of 10. If you enjoyed the review, then feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. And if you've seen Send Help already, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. I've been Nathan Orenstein with The No Show. Thanks for watching.